show.
Welcome to episode 150 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. He's Lepore, I'm Bruno. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. Massive milestone for the boys, episode 150, and what an episode we have in store for you, because the NHL draft is over. We are through the busy days of free agency. So the landscape is set now moving forward into next season. So we are going to give you our thoughts and opinions on everything the Leafs did in free agency, what we think of all their signings. There's also been some rumblings that the Leafs are considering stripping John Tavares of the captaincy. So we'll give our takes on that as well. And then we'll also discuss who we think is now the best team in the NHL post free agency. So I promise you want to stay tuned until the very end, because as always, this is going to be a juicy, juicy episode. But before we get into all that, it is officially time to welcome in my partner in crime, Mr. Michael Lepore. How you doing today, man?
Anthony Bruno, of course. I'm absolutely ecstatic to be here, but I'm a little uncomfortable, man. Your boy Lepore had to pay a visit to the dentist yesterday, and I had to have like this little mini surgery. And it wasn't fun. They had to like jam me with all these needles. They took tissue from one place, put it another place. 30 minutes, tough 30 minutes of my life. But it's funny. Yeah, you see that bill. The bill comes through when your wheels start turning of like, yeah, this guy gets paid what for 30 minutes of work? I need to have another talk with my high school guidance counselor on the direction I should have taken professionally. But a little swollen in the inside, blood here and there. So if Lepore starts spewing blood all over the screen, I apologize, but I'll do my best to prevent that.
Lepore, I thought we might have to put you on LTIR for a second.
Fuck,
So
yeah.
I'm glad that you actually found a way and you dug deep to do this podcast, episode 150, man.
Yeah, cue the Leafs LTIR jokes with that one.
We're going to send you to Robita Island, man.
Robita Island.
We'll see if you can get through this episode, but you sound pretty good so far. So let's dive right into this, man. Obviously, a lot has happened since we last recorded. As I mentioned, the draft is complete. Like I said, the start of free agency is complete. I mean, technically, like, free agency is still ongoing, but obviously all the major signings have gone down, and the Leafs made some pretty big splashes. So unless you've been living under a rock, I'm sure you know exactly what this team has done. Just going through the list here, they re-signed Max Domi, re-signed Timothy Liljegren, gave Joseph Woll a contract extension. The big signing, locking up Chris Tanev to a 6-year deal. Jesus, we will talk about that. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Anthony Stolarz, Matt Murray is back, and Yanni Hakanpää, even though there's still some mystery behind this, because at the time of recording, the Leafs still haven't officially announced this Yanni Hakanpää signing, and Steve Simmons reported that apparently he's dealing with a major knee issue, so we'll see what happens with that. But Lepore, I want to start with Chris Tanev, because obviously that was the biggest signing this team made, locking him up to a 6-year deal for $4.5 million per season. He is 34 years old, will be turning 35 during the season. What are your thoughts on this signing, man? Because I'll leave my opinion until after you give your thoughts here, but Jesus, this is a long-ass contract for a guy who's turning 35 years old.
You're already giggling, Bruno. It's not a good sign. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous about this deal. And all these numbers come out of how good he is defensively. I saw one that said over the last 5 years combined, he is the best expected goals against per 60 in the National Hockey League. So it just doesn't get scored on. And that may be the case, but the fact of the matter is, like you said, this guy's 34, turning 35. So I don't expect him to completely and utterly fall off a cliff and just be terrible. But how many good years are we going to get? And there's no secret in this deal. He signed until he's going to be, 41 years old. So at the end of the day, 40, 41. So at the end of the day, he's not going to finish the deal, whether it'll be because of an LTIR thing or retirement. And as far as the LTIR thing goes, he hasn't been healthy. I think he misses like 17 games a year. I don't know how long back that stat goes, but he does miss a lot of games and he does have some injuries. So even for his own sake, it's kind of like an insurance because he knows he's got a lot of miles on his legs. For what he brings and the type of player he is, I'm happy with it. I just hope and pray that there was a lot of evaluating as far as the term of the contract goes and how they're going to approach this. I mean, if he stays good, he stays good and it's fine. And the fact of the matter is 4.5 million. 4.5 million again, it's like an average player in the NHL. So even if he teeters a bit, who knows how we get more years than we think out of it. And I don't expect him to do the whole deal, but maybe things work out. So short term, ecstatic. Longer term, I'm not fully on edge. I'm not teetering, but I'm on edge, Bruno.
I think that's the correct take. This is a good player, but my goodness, this contract is going to age horribly. Just look at Mark Giordano.
Yeah.
We have a case study right in front of us. This guy won the Norris Trophy as a 35-year-old, and now he's completely fallen off a cliff. And we saw it over the last 2 years. Giordano was a liability for the last 2 years. He really was. Not that that's a perfect comparison, but again, I'm comparing Tanev to a guy who at the age of 35 won a Norris Trophy, was considered the best defenseman in the NHL, and soon after fell off a cliff. Now, I agree with what you said about Chris Tanev being, one of the best shutdown defensemen in the NHL. If you look at any of the underlying numbers, any of the advanced stats, that's what it'll tell you. This guy is one of the best shutdown D-men in the league. So I do believe that he's going to have at least a couple of really good seasons left in him. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Now, you did make a good point about how he misses time. This is not a very durable guy. He blocks a ton of shots. He puts his body on the line. And when you play that type of style, you're going to be very susceptible to injuries. The last time he played a full 82-game season was in 21-22 for the Calgary Flames. So chances are he's probably not going to play all 82 games. But I think the reason that the contract looks the way it does is because of what he's going to provide in the playoffs. We saw how good he was for Dallas in the playoffs this past season, and that's where this guy's money is made, right? He's going to play on the top pair with Morgan Rielly. He's going to play against the toughest competition every single night. He's going to put his body on the line. And if his numbers hold up, there's no reason why he can't be one of the best shutdown defensemen in the NHL, at least for the next 1 to 2 years. So I'm happy about that, but clearly this is not going to age well. So he's either going to go on LTIR at some point, maybe he's going to retire. That would obviously alleviate things for the Leafs salary cap wise, but just looking at the deal and seeing that term, it's like, my goodness, this is not going to age well. But again, in the short term, I'm very happy to add him to the Leafs, and I think he's going to have a very positive impact on this team over the next couple of years.
Being reasonable, Bruno, what would you say would have been the ideal contract for Tanev? Because if, let's say, it was shorter term, it would have been more money. So would you have rather say 3 years at $6 million a year?
Yeah, like a 3-year deal or even a 4-year deal. A 4-year deal at $5 million a year, something like that.
4 at 5, yeah.
You know what? And there's probably people already saying, Lepore, like, it's the same thing because if this guy goes on LTIR or retires, like, really, it's like maybe we're being
it's better.
Bit. Yeah, like, maybe we're being a little bit too concerned about this, given that there are ways that the Leafs can get out of this. But it's like, you just don't give a 6-year deal to a guy who's about to turn 35 years old. You just shouldn't be doing this stuff.
Is it a first time? I'd like to look that up. If a guy at that age got that kind of, someone signed to 41.
Good question. Probably not, I would guess. I don't have the number, I don't have that information right in front of me, but yeah. And listen, I mean, he was a very sought after player. There were a lot of teams that wanted his services. Dallas tried to re-sign him as well. So Treliving obviously identified him as the main guy that he wanted. And that's why he traded for his rights before free agency even opened. So listen, I think he's going to have a positive impact on the team, but who knows how long this is going to last. But, it's the same thing kind of with Oliver Ekman-Larsson. I actually really like this signing. He's a little bit younger than Tanev. I thought he was excellent for Florida in the playoffs, especially the Stanley Cup final. He ended up taking over the first power play unit. He took over Brandon Montour's job because that power play was abysmal. And you know what? The power play in the Cup final for the Panthers was not good either, but I thought Oliver Ekman-Larsson overall was pretty darn solid for the Panthers. So I like that he's coming on board as well. Now, again, would it be nice to get Oliver Ekman-Larsson like 6 to 7 years ago, and maybe Chris Tanev, same thing, 6 to 7 years ago when they were younger? Sure. But I think they're both still quality players, and they're obviously going to provide an upgrade on the blue line. But again, Lepore, the main issue of this team is scoring goals in the playoffs. And I don't know how these guys really help that. Oliver Ekman-Larsson's a good puck mover. I think he's going to provide a little bit more offense from the back end. But in total, I still think that this team has some issues to deal with up front.
Yeah. Ekman-Larsson's had a weird career. Because I remember he played for Arizona. So anyone saying they spent all this time watching Arizona Coyotes games while Ekman-Larsson was there is lying. But he had this reputation. I remember a lot of people saying he's the best defensive defenseman in the National Hockey League, full stop. This guy's incredible, but nobody sees him because he plays where he plays. And then he went from that to being essentially like, what the fuck happened? Like totally trash. His underlying numbers were bad. And I'll say it, when he got traded to Vancouver, I was very critical of Vancouver to do that deal. Because they got rid of those contracts that were almost up to take him on. And he had a lot of term of why would you do that for this guy who's washed up? And things kind of turned around from there. And like you said, he won a cup with Florida. But at that number again, 3.5 million. These numbers now, as long as he's not an outright liability, 3.5 million, if he just brings average play, consistent play, he's a vet, he's on the power play once in a while, you're getting your value. And you made the point, 4 years, he signed to at least 36. Who knows, right? I'm not gonna be stereotypical, but Swedes usually take care of their bodies pretty well. But yeah, that one low key, I think it's a talk, Bruno. Is that a better signing in your eyes than the Tanev signing? Or is that one of those ones everyone now is excited about Tanev because of the brand, but in 2 years, could we be like, no, Ekman-Larsson was the better signing?
That's a really good question. I'm a big fan of Ekman-Larsson. As I said, I thought he was excellent for the Panthers during the season in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Because even, during the season, Brandon Montour, it took him a while to come back into the lineup because he had off-season shoulder surgery. And Ekman-Larsson took on a bigger role, at least at the start of the year. And then obviously as the playoffs progressed, you saw how much confidence Paul Maurice had in him, to have him run the first power play unit, play all the minutes that he did. Honestly, I think both signings, it's almost like a 50-50 coin toss to me. Because as you said, everyone's talking about Tanev. He's a Toronto guy, the brand. I think both, just in a vacuum, were very good signings, and both are going to provide an upgrade for the team. And yeah, I think there's a real possibility that in a couple years, the Oliver Ekman-Larsson signing actually ends up being a better signing than the Tanev signing, based on the money at least. It's time for a quick break for a word about Manscaped. Are you ready to enjoy the summer just like the Leafs? Because if you are in luck, because our friends over at Manscaped have you covered from head to toe this summer season. With the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra, this ultimate all-in-one grooming kit is set to have you looking and feeling your absolute best. Trust Manscaped and unlock the confidence you need to turn heads this summer. Join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped for 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com using our exclusive code GFP20. Lepore, Manscaped never disappoints, unlike the Toronto Maple Leafs.
They always disappoint, Anthony Bruno. Gentlemen, if you are like Anthony Bruno and you have a villa on Lake Como and you rock your Speedo on the beach next to George Clooney's villa, Make sure you look the part, make sure you're silky smooth, and use products from Manscaped. Like Bruno said, promo code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping.
You heard him. Head to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping using our exclusive code GFP20. That is code GFP20 at manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping. I promise you will not be disappointed. It's time for an important message from BetterHelp, a sponsor of today's episode. Sometimes in life, we go through difficult times, whether that's personally, whether that's in a relationship, and your mental health cannot be ignored. And a lot of times, you can't tackle these situations by yourself. You need help. And that's where BetterHelp comes in. They make therapy easier and much less intimidating for a lot of people. BetterHelp lets you have therapy sessions as a phone call, video chat, or even messaging, whatever is most comfortable for you. BetterHelp will connect you with one of 30,000 therapists in their network. And in most cases, you'll be connected with a therapist within 48 hours. So go to betterhelp.com/GFP for 10% off your first month of therapy. Lepore, this service is incredible.
It is incredible, Anthony Bruno. Mental health is something that's very serious. And be aware, if you're going through a dark time, you do not have to try to beat this thing alone. There are services out there that can provide you with some great help. BetterHelp is number one when it comes to that. As Bruno mentioned, there are different ways you can get in touch with people, different ways you can contact people. It's all up to you. Go to betterhelp.com/GFP.
Join 4 million people who have used BetterHelp to live healthier and happier lives. So go to betterhelp.com/GFP for 10% off your first month of therapy to connect with a therapist and see if BetterHelp is right for you. What are your thoughts on Stolarz? Anthony Stolarz, 6'6" goalie. He was the backup to Sergei Bobrovsky. Last year had incredible advanced stats. Like, he was one of the top guys in the league in terms of goals saved above expected. But, you know, was it the result of playing on a Panthers team that was the best defensive team in the NHL? Maybe. But, you know, he's going to be here to push Joseph Woll as the backup. He's probably going to play like 30-ish games, and who knows? Woll has a terrible history of staying healthy, so Stolarz might actually be the starter at some point. So what are your thoughts on Stolarz as the backup?
I'm actually kind of confused by that signing on his end, because I look at us and why wouldn't we do that? I mean, we all knew we were going to try to get that we weren't going to get an A goalie, like this number one starting guy. So everyone's like, hey, something similar to what Sammy made, and a deal that's not complete and utter hope, because that's how I always that's what I always say when we talk about deals. I say, okay, you sign this guy for that amount of money and that amount of term. How much hope is in what you see? Are you just hoping that this player plays to that level? Because if you are, that's not a good thing. But there's always that little bit of hope, right? A little bit of optimism. So from our eyes, getting him at that price for 2 years for the type of guy we were going to look for, to me, it's 10 out of 10. Like, why wouldn't the Leafs do that? This guy, what more do you want? This guy had good numbers. He's not that old. It's only a 2-year deal. It's not that much money. So who cares? Really? Like, why wouldn't we do that? On his end, I don't get it. Because Joseph Woll signed that 4-year deal, okay? And with the year Stolarz had last year, I thought he was going to get a lot of attention in free agency. I thought there were a lot of teams were going to go chasing. A few of my buddies here, Sens fans, were talking about him during the season. I already circled him and said, hey, he's a free agent. Like, this guy, we should make a play for this guy. Obviously, they got Allmark. But I don't know. Like, I can't really see the opportunity he sees. Maybe he points to, like, okay, Wall's still a kid and he's injury prone, so I may get the spotlight. And if this kid gets hurt, he's LTIR, so it's my crease, and we'll go from there. So I'm happy with it. I'm a Leafs fan, so I'm happy with it. I'm just on his end. I don't know why he didn't. I don't know why he did choose Toronto, because I'm pretty surprised no one came forward and offered him a starting job. Would say not like no one was going to go crazy and give this guy $7-8 million, but even more money and more term. Maybe like, hey, this is your net to lose. So I don't know what your take on the whole thing is.
I think this was more of a long-term play for Anthony Stolarz because I would imagine he probably could have got a bigger contract from someone else. But you said it, man. Joseph Wall can't stay healthy. He's going to be in the spotlight. Look at Jack Campbell. When he took over the starting job in Toronto, he had a really good stretch, was an all-star, then fell off a cliff, and then signed a 5x5 with the Oilers. So Stolarz can be thinking, you know what? This is an amazing opportunity. This is a good team. It's going to make the playoffs. I might end up playing the majority of the games here. I could easily steal the starting job. And then next thing you know, he's signing a 5-year contract for $25 million, either as the Leaf starter or he goes somewhere else. So I think it's a really good opportunity for him. So maybe he didn't take as much right now, but he put himself in a pretty darn good situation to get the bag down the road.
Yeah, he's hoping for the post Toronto Maple Leafs tax when he hits free agency in 2 years, and we all know it's a real thing. You're lying. I say all the time, if I was a mid to below average National Hockey League player on the wrong side of 30 or approaching 30, Toronto's where I would want to play. I mean, you go over guys like Luke Shen, you mentioned Jack Campbell. These guys get these deals. Labushkin, see the contract he got. Like, where am I?
It's crazy.
Like the Toronto thing is real, and I'm not pumping the tires of my team. I don't know what it is. It could just be like an attention thing and a bias thing. But I mean, I'm happy about it. And of all of our free agent signings, Bruno, I'll say it, man. I think the Stolarz deal may have the highest ceiling than all those other deals, because who knows? Like it's a gamble. It's a goalie, and I'm the first one to say save percentage is a team stat. And the guy had like a 9.25 last year, I think it was. So who knows what'll happen in Toronto with a team that's not as buttoned up defensively, or maybe now they will be. We'll see with these other guys they signed. But I just think it's got a lot of potential of this guy. He's shown that he can be very good. And if he is very good, that's a hell of a deal at that price point.
Yeah, it's a pretty good take. Listen, even though I completely ripped the term for the Tanev contract, I think in a vacuum, just thinking about, okay, like who are the best players here? Tanev was the best signing. At least I think it'll be the case over the next 1 to 2 years. But in terms of like total value, you touched on it. I think Ekman-Larsson might end up being the best signing here, just based on, he's still 32 years old. He looked good last season. He can play on the power play. So I'm going to say short term, the best signing was Tanev. And I'm going to say over the next like 3 to 4 years, Oliver Ekman-Larsson. But before we move on, Lepore, your thoughts on the guys that the Leafs re-signed, Domi and Liljegren, because this Max Domi thing, I think people are getting so carried away with it. Obviously, it's a brand thing. His father, has so much history as a member of this team. Domi has an amazing social media game. Like he re-signs and he makes that video from the Wolf of Wall Street and people are losing their shit. But can we just take a step back and understand, like, this dude scored 9 goals last year. I get it. He's a good player, really good playmaker. Like what's that number? Like his assists per 60 at 5-on-5 is like one of the best in the NHL. I totally get it. But I mean, it's like, other than that, like it is what it is. Like people I think are too excited about this Domi coming back. Like he's a fine player, even Liljegren, like solid player, right shot defenseman, but I am not getting overly excited about either of these guys coming back. I think they're good players. Like I think they're both good signings, but I don't think, either of them is really moving the needle for this team.
Yeah, I think the Domi deal, I think it's a fair deal for a guy that age and the career he's had. But you said it, it's brand. People are excited. We're insecure Leafs fans. So when a guy actually does want to play here, we're like, what the fuck? And we get all excited. Like the pretty girl at school likes me. What? No way. But I mean, again, it's cool. People like him. Social media. We have a lot of robots on the team. And what I do like about it, and this comes into play not in many markets in the National Hockey League. In different sports it does, but in the National Hockey League, I always picture the difference, or try to think about the difference it is after a practice or after a game in the locker room when it comes to the media and like who they want out, who they want to speak to, that stuff. And in some markets, there's like no one. Like the media is super small. There's nobody they really want to talk to. And then you have a market like Toronto where there's a hard list of guys they want to talk to. And I think what a guy like Domi brings is he provides a distraction. Like he can stop it, like, I'll do the talking. You can put the mic on me, give Austin the night off, and he's good enough on the mic and he's popular enough that he's not out of line or out of place doing that. So that's what I appreciate about Domi being around. And again, anything to distract from any possible negativity that can happen during the season, right? Like even Domi last year, he started out terribly. He wasn't having a good year. We were hard on him, but it wasn't that bad because, okay, really, it's Domi. Whereas like Tavares had that streak, what do you go, 10, 11 games without a goal? We wanted his fucking head on a silver platter. So Domi, having him there, the personality, it helps. I think it helps in a market like Toronto. So I'd be lying if I said I wasn't happy about it. I'll sum it up that way.
I will say this. I think it was a better decision to re-sign Domi at this number than re-sign Bertuzzi for what he got, which I believe was 5.5 million. Like Domi's faster, so he provides this team with more speed. He's more versatile than Tyler Bertuzzi. He actually wants to be here. This is a dude that has dreamed of winning a Stanley Cup in Toronto, which, you know, as corny as that sounds, I think it's important because there's not a lot of guys, especially GTA guys, that actually want to play here. And he has committed to this team and wants to be here. So that's exciting as well. So listen, he's going to provide versatility, wants to be here, more speed, checks a lot of boxes. It's just, I'm not getting overly excited. I think the key for this team, and it's really the key for any of these top teams, like you need your young guys to take a leap. You need Matthew Nyes to take a leap next year. Bobby McMahon, I understand he's a little bit older, but you need that dude to take a leap. Like, that's how this team is going to improve. Mm-hmm. Like, we can't have Matthew Nyes score like 15 goals again. Like, can he become a 25 goal scorer next season? Like that, those are the things that will take this team to the next level. Because at this point, looking at the free agent market, there's really not anything out there that the Leafs can do to improve the top six at this point. So they need guys to take leaps internally, or there's going to be a trade at some point, either before the season starts or during the season to improve this team.
Yeah, I'm with you with the Bertuzzi one. Like, I kind of waved on it back and forth. I think there was definitely a recency bias with it because the only reason why I was even considering it to be a good idea was because he finished pretty strong, and that was kind of the Bertuzzi we were hoping with all year. But the more I thought about it, I just went over the things I think Domi brings, and some of them are off the ice. I look at the number it would have taken to sign Bertuzzi, and we saw what he signed for. Was it 5.5? So he got a little raise. 5.5 million. I'm like, does he make our team better? Really?
Marginally better, maybe?
Yeah, what needle does he move? And I said during the season or towards the end of the season, I thought not like I was hard on Nyes all last year up until maybe the final third of the season where I really thought he turned it on. And by the end of the season, my take was, well, he's better than Bertuzzi. He does what we were hoping Bertuzzi would do. So why would we give this guy 5.5 million in term, who's older and seems to be inconsistent, right? So I was okay with letting him walk. I think that kind of would have been a lazy signing had we signed Bertuzzi. Like safe, but you don't want to be safe with those guys who are average and don't really move the needle and don't necessarily make very little money.
Before we move on, do you have any other takes on anything else that happened with the Leafs in free agency?
What are your thoughts on the Lily signing? People were Lily is one of the most polarizing players, man. Low key with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Some people love Liljegren. Some people say they want him gone. Some people are calling the organization idiots because they show on paper that they like him by giving him a contract, but they have him in the press box sometimes. Strange, man. What's your take on him resigning?
I think Liljegren's a good depth defenseman. I'm actually more of a fan than him. I would say, you know, if you were to pull most Leaf fans, maybe it's 50-50 split down the middle, maybe 60-40, like don't like 60 like him, 40 don't like him. I'm in the camp that I actually like Timothy Liljegren. He kind of is what he is. I think he provides a little more offense than he gets credit for. So listen, I think he's a nice depth defenseman, and at that number, you know, what is it officially here? $3 million a year over 2 years. I mean, like, it's not bad at all, man.
Yeah. Yeah. For that, again, for that money, what do you really want, and how bad will he have to be for us to be really pissed off about it? So I'm happy with it. Like I like Lily. I think with the whole draft thing of how he was projected at first, people had unreasonable expectations for him, but I don't see when like people are so hard on him. With Sandine, like there was games I wanted to rip my fucking hair out because he was just getting out
Yeah,
muscled.
Sandine was so small. Like he's just a
Oh,
really
played
small
small.
guy.
Yeah,
Yeah, whereas Liljegren actually has size. He can move. He can provide offense. Like
right
Liljegren's a
shot.
nice depth defenseman. You can do a lot worse for a depth defenseman than Timothy Liljegren. That's my
Mm,
opinion.
mm. Here,
Anyway,
let's do this really quickly, Bruno. Of the guys, Toronto, who were guys who did not sign with Toronto? Who did you really want, or who were you really hoping for? Being reasonable.
geez, that's a really good question. The one guy I thought was going to choose Toronto, who I kind of really would have liked in the top six, is Jeff Skinner. Like I think that would have been a really nice fit. Now,
Mm,
defensively, he's kind of terrible, but there's a team that needs goal scoring. Jeff Skinner, he can score goals. I think he would have been a nice fit, especially for the price that Edmonton got him for, which I believe was
yeah.
3 million. So
Mm.
I think that's the one guy that sticks out to me. There's not another name maybe that's jumping out at me. How about you?
I wanted Skinner as well. There's buzz that the Leafs actually made a pretty hard pitch for him, and they even presented that they would give him a shot with Matthews and Marner. But what's hilarious is that that's an amazing pitch, but you have someone else saying, "Yeah, but you get to play with Connor McDavid." So, awkward. But yeah, I would have liked Skinner at that price. I thought it was very good and it's great value for Edmonton. I wanted Zadorov.
Okay.
I fell in love with Zadorov over the playoffs. Like before, there's all the connections with Trill Living, and I was like, who like people are overhyping this, whatever. But then watching him in the playoffs, watching these games for Vancouver, he never shut the fuck up. Every time the
Yeah,
camera
he's
was
a
on him,
menace and he's
oh
huge
fuck.
and runs into people constantly.
I loved it. He never stopped beaking, and then he took that shot at Edmonton. I'm like, this guy'd be perfect in Toronto, in the
But
biggest
would
city you
you
get.
would you rather have Zadorov than Tanev? Or did you want to sign both of them?
I'm greedy, Bruno. I wanted it all.
Okay.
Yeah,
But if
I
you
was
had to
hoping
pick
for that.
one, who would you pick?
What did Zadorov sign again for? 5 million?
Yeah, I want to say it was actually maybe even been a shade over five, I want to say. Let me double check here. Zadorov. Okay, no, 6 years, 5 million on the nose.
So essentially the same deal as Tanev, $500,000 more. But he's how old?
Yeah, he's a lot younger than Chris Tanev. I want to say he's at least 3 to 4 years younger.
Mm.
So
At least. I'd say I'm 50-50 on it. Like if you made that swap, I wouldn't I wouldn't be affected by it, but I'm greedy and I wanted both. The other one, and people are going to be surprised at this one, and he took a lot of shit in this city, but I think this kid has a lot of potential and he never got the proper opportunity here. And it kind of fits into what Toronto needs. I wanted Eric Brandstrom.
okay.
The Sens let him walk, and here's this kid. He can skate. At the time of his when he was drafted and the deal was made, or when the deal was made, because he was in the Mark Stone trade, people said he was the best defenseman in the draft, and a lot of people like Ottawa won that deal getting this kid. He can skate. He moves the puck. He's frustrating because he can be a turnover machine because he's soft. Like we just talked about what Sandine looked like while he was in Toronto. But I just think this kid still has a ceiling and can be a lot better. His underlying numbers are insane, and that may have to do with what competition he's put up against. And I'm not sitting here saying I think he could be like a top two defenseman, even maybe like a third defenseman. But for the money, for $1 million, I would have been happy to gamble on Brandstrom. And we talk about us not being able to score goals, us not being able to move the puck. He does that. His zone exits are very good from his underlying numbers. Again, like there are turnover problems. And sorry, maybe it's the zone exits that are not strong, but his what do they call it? His like zone to zone is very good. He does move the puck. So I thought for $1 million, like I would have been down for that kid.
You know the only problem, Lepore? He's too small for Brad Living
Yeah,
on the
there you
back
go.
end. 5'10", 185. That is way too small for Brad Living.
Fair
So
enough. Well,
as
he's
we've
even
seen,
signing
so
he's even signing monster goalies. Fuck. We can't even we're not letting anyone in who's not
yeah,
big.
you have to be like at least like 6'2" to be signed by Brad Treliving.
There goes my
And listen,
chance.
he wanted Zadorov too. Like
Fucking right,
he very clearly, even going back to last year, wanted both Tanev and Zadorov. Didn't get Zadorov, but yeah, Treliving likes a big, nasty, mean defense core. And honestly, right now, I think the Leafs D core looks pretty good overall.
I think so too. It's weird.
Before we get into probably the juiciest topic of the podcast, I want to close free agency with this. Who do you think is the best team in the NHL right now post free agency? And again, I know I'm saying post free agency, even though it's technically still going on, but all the big fish have been signed. So right now, who do you think is the best team in the league? Because I know who I think is the best team in the league.
Yeah, I'm gonna give a boring answer. You're probably gonna say the same thing, and I fucking hate that. But I think the obvious answer is, okay, and you look at a lot of teams, and I will say this, I will look in the camera and I will say this straight. I'm starting to feel bad for a lot of teams around the National Hockey League because there's this whole idea in hockey where they think teams have sort of like a window and there's a cycle and they're good for 4 to 5 years and then they go down and rebuild. So teams always look forward to think, okay, like that's when our young kids will be getting better. And then that's our opportunity to maybe top the division or make a run in the playoffs. But the good teams aren't getting any weaker. And I was talking to some Sens fans, and they're like, their feelings are low right now, man. They look at free agency, and they looked me in the face and said, "Well, on paper, the Leafs got better. Florida's Florida. Boston got better. With Tampa's moves, they're at least the same. Those are the four
The
teams.
Atlantic Division is still a gauntlet.
Man, I'm even
teams
getting
for teams like Ottawa, for Buffalo, for Detroit. Like they're still in a rough spot, man.
Montreal. Yeah,
Montreal, like, so, same thing.
Even for me, I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't at a point where I was like, okay, Tampa's kind of teetering right now and they're gonna start their way down. No, fuck it. They get maybe the biggest free agent signing. They're not going anywhere. It's like, would you guys go away? And the Bruins, same thing with the Bruins. Oh, Krejci retired. Bergeron retired. They pick up Lindholm and Zadorov. Man, these teams aren't getting any weaker. So it's tough. Like I feel bad for a lot of these teams who are trying to find their way up. But I think the easy answer is Edmonton, because you could have argued last year they were the best team in the league. And if you look at what they added with Skinner, I mean, well, they didn't get worse. If you're going to make an argument, they at least got better. So easy answer. And I hate to give a boring answer, but I think it's the Edmonton Oilers.
No, that's the correct answer. I think the Edmonton Oilers are very clearly the best team in the NHL heading into next season, and mostly because they're running it back with the same roster, plus a couple of very good improvements. They signed Victor Arvidsson, which I thought was a low-key very good free agent signing. This is like a 25, 30 goal scorer who's going to play with some very high-end players. They were able to bring in Jeff Skinner. They're running it back with basically the exact same team. This is going to, and listen, I said this, as this season came to an end, that it was their last chance to kind of win the cup, but they're going to have one more year to do it because this team looks like it's better than the team last year on paper. And the betting odds back it up. Right now, the Oilers are the betting favorite to win the Stanley Cup next season.
Yeah.
So the books are telling us the exact same thing. Their forward group looks amazing. Their defense core, listen, you could still poke some holes in their D core and Stuart Skinner and net. But they came one win away from winning the Stanley Cup, and now they've upgraded up front. And, they're bringing the band back. They're obviously going to have to make a decision. Well, really, it's not their decision, but what's going to happen with Draisaitl? Is he going to re-sign? Is he going to walk? I don't think they're going to trade him. Like, I think they're just going to fucking hope they win the Stanley Cup. And then obviously the McDavid decision is going to happen the following year. So this is a damn good hockey team, man, heading into next season.
Yeah. How much? I hate to bring this up, and this is so Leafs. Toronto filled holes. people can say about what they signed and whatever. Toronto had needs and they addressed them. Full stop. So Leafs fans should be very happy about that. How far away is Toronto from that in terms of what they could have done in free agency? Like if they say sign Skinner and Zadorov, would you be like, the Leafs are the shit? The Leafs are it?
Yeah, I think the Leafs are still maybe a player or two away from me being like extremely confident in their like Stanley Cup chances, but I think the Leafs are still like in that group, to be honest with you. Again, it all comes down to what the hell are their big guys going to do in the playoffs, because they have all underwhelmed. It hasn't just been Mitch Marner, which I've been yelling about the last like 3 or 4 podcasts. Matthews hasn't been good enough in the playoffs. Tavares hasn't been good enough. The only guy that's actually like carried over his success from the regular season to the playoffs has been William Nylander. So that's what it comes down to. Then could Nyes take a leap? Is Bobby McMahon going to take a leap? Will Stolarz or Joseph Wall end up providing quality goaltending? Like that, I mean, that's what it comes down to. The Leafs are a good team here. Like, let's not get it twisted. I don't think they're that far off, like these top teams. I think they're in the mix. Like, wouldn't you still agree that the Leafs are easily like a top 8 to 10 team in the NHL? I know that's not saying a ton.
Yeah,
I think they're easily a top 8 to 10 team in the league.
Well, I think the fact of the matter is they finished, it was with 101 points last year, and they had a bad year. I think the Leafs really had a bad year. They had it was not so much their start, like their second phase of the season was pretty shit. And they had goaltending issues. They were down to their third string goalie. So like they didn't have a good regular season. I never thought they were that good. They never looked good to the eye. And they still finished with 101 points. And you look at what's out and what they brought in, okay? Like they replaced Brody and Klingberg with Tanev and OEL. Okay. Samsonov with Stolarz. If I'm quick math, if you add those 3 in and add those 3 out, we're still ahead on the cap. And then like we retained Domi. Like you could say that we lost Bertuzzi, but like I said, with that, really, what did we lose? So again, I think this team easily clips 100 points, and that puts them in that mix of teams that are you going to pick them to win the Stanley Cup? No, but they're good enough to beat almost anybody, if not everybody.
So in conclusion, the Oilers are the best team in the league. The Leafs are going to coast into the playoffs again, and the Ottawa Senators are going to miss the playoffs again. Great. Really great.
You said it, not me. Can't wait for that episode, preseason preview.
All right, man. Before we close out this episode, we got to talk about some juicy news that was reported by Nick Kypreos. And I'll read his quote. It's on the Leafs captaincy and John Tavares. So here's what Nick Kypreos said on his show on Sportsnet. He said, "From what I'm hearing, the Leafs are contemplating taking the captaincy away from Tavares and giving it to Austin. They will talk about it. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's real." Now, this is something that I've been kind of beating the drum on because I think the Leafs need a new captain. They need to move on from Tavares. I know people have said, bring him back on a hometown discount. I want nothing to do with this guy moving forward. And again, it's nothing against him as a person or even as a player. Like, I think he's still a pretty good player, but I think the Leafs just need to move on from him as the captain. I would love to see Austin Matthews as the captain. I think even Morgan Riley is captain material, and say what you want about Riley. I know there's people saying to trade him as well, but I think either of those guys would be a better fit as captain, and maybe that would provide, maybe another jolt to this team, because obviously there's the coaching change. Berube's coming in. But other than that, obviously these free agent signings, but we've seen what it's done to some teams in the past, like even San Jose, right? When they took the captaincy away from Thornton, I think all in all, like that was actually like a positive move for them. So yeah, I mean, would I like to see it? I wouldn't mind seeing it, to be honest with you, because I don't think Tavares is going to be here long term. Do I think it's going to happen? No, I don't, because this is a team that kind of plays it safe with a lot of the things they do. But I think moving forward, this is clearly Austin Matthews' team, and maybe it's better to give him the C sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I would just think he's a year away. Why do it from his contract ending? Why do it now? Why not do it when either he leaves completely or he takes the Toronto discount. So then it's like, okay, he can give the speech. I'm passing on these responsibilities to whether it's Matthews or whomever because they've earned it. I just think it's too loud of a thing to do now. And think of the attention that'll bring altogether on him re-signing with the team. There'll be a lot of takes saying, well, now they're not going to re-sign him. And I don't think they want that attention all around. And maybe they don't care. But I just think it's too loud of a thing to do. And it doesn't really serve enough of a purpose to not wait. In my eyes, you might as well wait to do it. And the whole Matthews thing being captain. Okay, Bruno. Okay. Other than Matthews being that's funny. Other than Matthews being the best player in the history of the franchise. Okay. Why do you think he should be captain?
Well, I think he should be captain because now I think we've seen a lot of maturity in him. Like, I did not think he should have got the captaincy, when they ended up giving it to John Tavares, just because he was still young. He had that stupid incident where like he pulled down his pants, whatever the hell happened with that. Like, I think he was still, honestly, he was a kid still at the time. But now he's been in the league for 8 years. He's been through a lot of wars in the playoffs. He's been through a lot of like rough times as a Leaf. I think he is now like fully prepared. We've seen him win 2 Rocket Richard trophies, a Hart trophy. He obviously has the accolades. He's been around long enough now where he's obviously one of the veteran leaders on this team, and he's one of the faces of the NHL. So I think he's been a lot better just in terms of like his communication, how he speaks publicly, when he's talking to the media. I think he's taken a lot of strides, and I think he would be a good captain. I there's no doubt about it in my mind.
You know what I say to that? Why'd you only sign for 4 years, Austin?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. And I ripped his ass when he only signed for 4 years. I wish he signed an 8-year deal, but that's a good point. It's a really good point.
Why should you get it? You're not committing to us. You're not committing to us. You're saying either you don't want to be here forever or you want to make as much money as possible. Like, I'm sorry. I'd have an issue with that. And even if he gets let's say he gets the captaincy at the end of this season. What? We may need another one in 3 years. I'll just decide to walk. We're the Toronto Maple Leafs, man. Like, we push you around. You don't push us around. I don't like it. I don't like it. I would not want him to be captain. I wouldn't have a huge problem with Austin Matthews being captain because I'd understand it. I understand the brand of it and the marketing of it. At the end of the day, it's a letter on a jersey. It's all bullshit. But no, I don't see it. Like, I should say I don't see it. I see it. I don't love it at all.
Like, could Matthews easily just re-sign for another 4 years and keep doing this to maximize his dollars? Sure. But you saying that just sparked a thought in my head, and something that really pissed me off before we close this out was Sam Reinhart signing an 8-year deal for $8.625 million to return to Florida. This guy scored 57 goals last year, 10 in the playoffs, the Stanley Cup game-winning goal in Game 7, and he just returns to Florida for under $9 million. That is crazy to me. And it just goes to show the advantages that these Florida teams have, not only because of, how good they are and the climate there and the tax benefits. It's just it's crazy. It's like all these teams, even Tampa, right? Like, they have this structure where like no one on the team makes more than 9.5, at least on Tampa. In Florida's case, Barkov's the highest paid guy at 10 a year. And then you have the Leafs with Matthews making 13.25, Nylander 11.5, Marner, who's probably going to re-sign for 11.5 to 12. And then, you have that happening in Toronto, and you see Sam Reinhart sign for $8.625 million. Like, what a slap in the face that is. Jesus.
See, I got to talk to someone in hockey or a high-end accountant to fully understand the differences here, because I've had people tell me the whole tax thing is bullshit because you get paid based on where you are when you're working. So it's state to state anyway. And of course you're at home more often, but also I've heard you can do it. So you set up a company in a certain place. Like, I've heard rumors that Matthews has set something up in Arizona, so they pay his company rather than paying him. If you have the accounts, you can do it. One. Number two, I haven't seen the structure of the Reinhart deal, but I assume it's not front loaded like these Toronto deals are. So there's the benefit there. So then what is it? what is it? Like this guy, he easily could have signed for $2 million a year more for the max term. Easily. And he said no. So is it the tax thing? Like, have I been lied to about how you can dance around it? Is it just a matter of where you play? Because I've thought about that. I've thought about people talk about pressure, the pressure of a city. And sometimes I buy it, sometimes I don't. But one thing I will say is I can see a player saying, well, I just have to deal with more here. And not that I don't like it, but I just have to deal with more here. So I'm not taking a discount. Whereas when you play in Florida, it's like, your life's relaxed. It's just, there's no real pressure. They had like 47 people at their parade. Haha, no. Panthers fans are pretty insecure about that, blabbing about how many people came to their parade. But I wonder if it's that. I'm in this big market. I get all this attention. I have 3 bad games in a row. Everybody wants me dead. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. I like playing in this market, but I'm not going to sign at a discount because I'm earning it with like the whole headspace thing I have to deal with. I don't know, but
yeah,
I'd love
I think
to
it's the Canadian tax. And this might even sound ridiculous, but a lot of these guys like to golf and they get to golf all year round in Florida. Like it just, I don't know, it just seems like a more appealing lifestyle. Honestly. And I think you're lying to yourself if you think otherwise, unless you're like the most hardcore Canadian ever. But geez, I mean, it's tough. It's like these guys are saying, hey, you want me to come play in Canada? You better pay me an extra couple $1 million or else I'm just going to go right down to the US and go play for one of these Florida teams and just enjoy my life and not have to deal with the bullshit that they have to deal with in Toronto, for example.
Yeah. I'd like to know the number. I'd like to know the number for Reinhart. Say if Montreal wanted to sign him and he was open to it, what's the number he's putting
then it's
forward?
probably like 10 or 11 million.
More? Like, number one, you said because of Canada and because the climate and the lifestyle thing. Maybe it's that simple. But then, like, Bruno, if you were that pro hockey player making that decision, we're talking an 8-year deal, $2 extra million a year. That's $16 million.
It's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money, man. That's a lot.
But maybe it's not worth it to some of these guys who just want to be low key. Maybe their wife or their girlfriend really loves it there. And again, they can kind of fly under the radar. No one really cares about if they play good or they play poorly, and they just collect their paycheck and they win hockey games.
Yeah, I've heard a former, he was an assistant GM, actually assistant GM with Toronto, assistant GM with the Capitals. And he made the point, he said, never underestimate the power of the wife or the girlfriend in these decisions. So a lot of times when guys leave and they seem angry, it's like sometimes that's the wife or the girlfriend saying, let's get the fuck out of here. And even though weird how he stayed, it's because their partner didn't want to leave. And nothing's wrong with that. It's your life. It's your family. I'm just making the point that it's not something we really think about, that these guys have families and have lives like that and have to make decisions with their partners.
Screw you, Florida hockey teams signing $10 to $11 million players for a shade over $8 million. God. Anyway, Lepore, is there anything else you want to get off your chest before we wrap up this podcast?
150, Bruno. 150. I haven't made the joke that they haven't shut us down yet, but I don't think there's any looking back now. I think we're smooth sailing until we're in the grave with this podcast, to everyone's chagrin.
The boys are going strong. 150. When we started this thing back in, I can't even remember now. I believe it was January 2021. We were like, we have no idea what's going to happen. We were kind of in the middle of COVID and we started this thing. And next thing you know, we've now recorded 150 episodes. So congratulations to us, Lepore. And thank you, GFP Nation, for following along for 150 episodes. We appreciate your support so much. But that is going to do it for episode 150 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. As I say after every podcast, if you're a first-time listener or a long-time listener and you really enjoyed this episode, please consider giving us a 5-star rating and review on Apple or Spotify. It does wonders to help out this podcast. And if you're watching us on YouTube and you really enjoyed the content, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below with your take on how the Leafs did in free agency. And while you're at it, ring the notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. So for Michael Lepore, I'm Anthony Bruno. Thank you for 150, and we will see you in the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
放到麦给他这有肉。